So we are just less than a minute away from our next presenter. Actually, right now, we'll turn the time over to James Ray to introduce our next presenter. James?
All right, thank you. And we would like to thank Karen Thomas for being able to come. Karen Thomas has devoted over 1,500 hours to researching various preparedness topics, especially in relation to teaching the public. Currently, she serves as the programs director for the Disaster Discovery Center project, and she's working on ways to simplify preparing and to make it fun. So with that, we look forward to Karen's presentation on free and low-cost steps to preparing. Go ahead, Karen.
Okay, well, I'm happy to be here with you and tell you about some free and low-cost steps that you can take to preparing. So we're going to unroll the red carpet for you and hopefully simplify this process so it will be easier for you to do. The Disaster Discovery Center, if you heard Talisha's little blurb before this, is a project right now, and we would like to build a future center that's devoted entirely to preparing the public for disaster. And we have been doing outreach programs for about 6 years, and that's really exciting, but we would like to have a permanent home someday. Some of the things we've collected during those 6 years are some statistics, and we've surveyed over 420 people. And this is what we learned about how they feel prepared, or if, like, do you feel prepared for a catastrophic event was a question that was asked. And we had yes at 5.5%. Mostly we had 26% of our Utah population for this survey that answered that, somewhat 62%, and wholly unprepared at 4.78%. So we think that we could actually help in this process because we like to dispel myths. So Talisha actually did a presentation in November, which is available on YouTube, and it talks about a bunch of disaster myths. And we would like to also dispel a myth right now, because a lot of people believe that preparing is super hard, time-consuming, and impossible, and so why bother to even try? But look how skewed this perspective is. What if we instead define preparedness as a lifestyle to protect what we value? Of course, we value our families, we value our homes, our businesses, and our pets, especially because people won't evacuate without their pets. Yet our survey found out that very few are ready to evacuate with pets. So let's get a new perspective. If we could make preparing simple, very doable, because we give you some steps how to do it and why to do it, that would make it worth the effort, and fun. For example, April before this talked about water and how important it is. What if you couldn't give your child a glass of water because there's no water coming out of the tap? What provisions have you made for that? Because there's simple ways that we can take care of that. So I like to think of preparing as having this beautiful home. And I love this one because it had the 6 steps that we need. There is a get ready pyramid that was put together in California, and it actually has 7 steps, and it's organized in a pyramid. But these are the areas that it talks about, the actual activities that we can do to prepare ourselves for disaster. And so these are what we're going to be talking about today. And they are adapted from the Get Ready Pyramid because that deals specifically with earthquakes. But it doesn't matter what the hazard is, we generally prepare the same thing, the same way for all of those hazards. So we're going to make plans, prepare documents, organize supplies, learn skills, safeguard finances, and mitigate homes. And why are we going to do that? Because inside that structure, we want this love of our family that really drives us to doing that. So household preparedness is a wide range of actions. It's not just about gathering supplies. And so we're going to plan ahead for what to do during and after a disaster, and then take these actions that will prevent or limit damage. Mitigation is a word that we didn't know back in 2014 when we started doing workshops, but it is pretty common now that we have heard a lot about it. But it's preparedness efforts that will help lessen the impact, reduce the loss of life and property, and ensure a more rapid recovery. And then it decreases financial impact. So think about those empty shelves April was showing us. How much more is that water going to cost when there's very little water and a huge demand for it? And one of the studies I saw in print said it actually saves an average of $4 if you put forth those efforts to date versus during an actual disaster. But I've seen $17 per dollar spent now, and I've also seen up to 51. So there are a lot of things that can happen with that. So step one, we're going to make some plans. We want to be better prepared at home. We want to make plans and ensure that our schools have a plan, or our children have a plan there, our workplaces, and then other places we go. If there are certain places that you like to go, which may have changed during the pandemic, but hopefully we will get back to going to some of those places again soon. Think about what you would do there. We're going to make plans. So what kind of plans are we going to make? Well, the first thing you can do that's totally free is to call this 1-800 number. You can't call it today because it's already after 3 o'clock, but call this and get this guide. It's a FEMA guide. You can get it online. It's about 204 pages, but I hate that it has so much ink that it uses to print, and then I still have to figure out how to bind it. And yes, you can view it online, but if I don't have power, this is a good resource. And so you will want to order that. It is limit 1 per household, but this is an excellent guide. And we have taken a lot of information for some of our workshops from this. So the first thing we want to do is to identify a safe location in every room. So if it's an earthquake, we're going to want to be away from the windows, under a table or desk, so we have some cover, or we could be on an inside wall, but make sure there's nothing above you that could fall on you. And then in a tornado, again, away from windows. Don't go to the window and try to film something. We want to stay away from those in case they break. You can go in a basement, hallway, bathroom, but you don't want to be near an exterior wall or any skylights. And then for fire, identify 2 exits in every room. You can use the doors and windows, and you might need a ladder, so keep that in mind. A fire safety evacuation plan. We talked about that survey that we conducted. So if you see parentheses with a percentage inside of them, then it was part of the survey, and that we found 39% of those 400 some people we surveyed had a fire safety evacuation plan. So this is a free thing we can do, right? Locate those 2 exits from every room, hold our regular fire drills. Make sure you do one at night, especially if you've got young children or any children. We found that our oldest son, who was probably in his teens at the time we started doing these, did not wake up, even if we used the fire alarm that was in his room directly above his head. He would not wake up. He didn't hear it. So it's really good to know that, because he had his brother that slept in that room who knew that he was going to have to help his brother wake up and drag him out with it. And then you want to check your fire detectors every 6 months, make sure those batteries are working. A lot of firefighters will say that the homes they go into that have had fires, they have the fire alarm, but the people have taken the batteries out of them. They're not going to do us any good if we do that. So evacuation routes. Now select an evacuation return route that with alternatives for every family member to travel from work or to school or from school by foot, car, or public transportation, depending on how the roads are, how the transportation system is at the time. And then the alternates that you have That's really important. We kind of live between two main roads, and a lot of times we would walk to a place that was about a mile away, and there were two different ways we could go and two different ways we could come home. And we traveled that route over and over again some days trying to figure out where someone was. And so it's really good to say, okay, if this road is passable, that's going to be my first option. And if it's not, then identify some other options so you know where to look for each other. Now we're going to choose family meeting places. First of all, choose one that's outside your home in case of fire. So 47% of the people we surveyed said they had chosen that. I'm not going to really mention too much about these percentages because you can read those if you're interested in them from the slides. But this one is extremely important. When you choose that family meeting place outside your home, unless you have a very large yard without a fence, and especially a vinyl fence, which starts to melt in a fire, you don't want to be in a confined space. Don't select your backyard as a place to meet for your family meeting place in case of a fire. Do select a place, probably not your own mailbox because it may be too close to your home, but probably across the street at their mailbox. Select a place that you would meet in case of fire. You don't want someone going to the back of the home and someone being in the front of the home and then you thinking that there's someone still in the home. So this is extremely important to do. And so far, we have not spent any money selecting these routes and making these plans. Now select one outside the neighborhood in case we have an evacuation. This would be like if we have a gas leak or something, and it doesn't need to be that far away from your home, but where would you go and meet up with the rest of your family when they're coming if you needed to do that? And then if there is major devastation and you cannot be in your home, select an area outside your home that you could get to if you were traveling by foot, or hopefully we have some transportation available, but we'll have to see. But select that area so that your family knows where to meet up. And then select an out-of-state contact. There was a question about this at one of the recent webinars that I heard, and an out-of-state contact just has to live out of state. It's okay if they have the same area code phone number because they once lived in Utah, but that isn't going to affect that. Let's just figure out someone who lives out of state and then let them know what you want them to do. And then make sure every family member has that cell number that you're going to text. A text only takes a quarter of a second to ping the tower and get through. And sometimes it will get through hours later, but it has a better chance of getting through, and then you're not helping to jam the towers and keeping those open for especially emergency workers and other emergencies. And then teach your family what you want them to report. So practice reporting. Okay, I'm at this location. This is my condition. I'm not injured at all. I'm with a friend who is injured their leg, so I'm going to stay there, or whatever plan you make. Or it's not safe to stay where I am. This is where I now plan to go. So that this out-of-state contact will collect this information for the family, because like I said, the cell towers can be jammed for the area we are in, or where the disaster is especially, but not necessarily. Text can a lot of times get out of the area. And make plans for special needs. Infants and children, you want to plan a little bit differently. They're going to need different supplies in their disaster supply kits than an adult would. And elderly individuals, they, like April talked about, may have some mobility issues. It's harder for them to get around, or those with disabilities, whatever kind of disability that might be. Make plans to accommodate that. And then pets and domestic animals, we found that only 29% had a plan if they had a pet or animal that they would want to get out with them. That's a really important thing to do, because a lot of people consider their pet as a very integral part of their family. Utah does have a special needs registry, And you can either call 211 if you don't use the internet, or go to specialneedsutah.org and register individuals that could require special assistance. And then step 2, we're going to prepare some documents. Let's make hard copy lists of contacts and phone numbers, especially emergency type contacts. And this, again, is another free thing. As we start in copying documents so that we can help with the disaster relief and recovery services, having copies of some different things, which will, there is actually a presentation tomorrow entirely devoted to that, but we'll touch on a couple things that could be important. A medical consent form for a dependent, prepare one of those. I had not heard of that, but I know that when I send my kids to camp or take kids to camp, that I have to have a health form that's signed by a parent. And on that is generally something that allows another adult to act in the stead of the parent. So personal documents that you might want, government issued identification like a passport or birth certificate, medical prescriptions. We don't see those written out very much, but try and get one of those, or sometimes your label on your bottle could suffice for that. But that's important to get if there's a prescription that you need to have. If you have a pet, you want vaccination information and photos. And if they have a carrier that, it's a small animal, you can put in, underneath or into that carrier with them. That would be good. You also, with pet, want to have a photo of your family with that pet. That's really good so that in case they do get separated, you can identify them as being yours so that someone else doesn't get to take off with them. Insurance policies are very important too. Medical consent form has a few statements on it. Someday we hope to have one posted on our website that makes it super easy for a parent to fill those out. But it's a statement that you're the legal parent or guardian. You will name family members, friends, or neighbors who could authorize your child to receive medical treatment if they can't contact you or one of the parents. It will tell their medical conditions, history, any medications they take, and the dosages of that and frequency. The contact information for your normal medical provider, your health insurance information, and then of course, your signature and your contact information are some of the things it would contain. Organizing supplies is step 3. These are kind of organized as to how much they're going to cost. And so we actually, because this is such a huge area, and we are going to skip it for a minute and go on to step 4, and we'll come back and get this one at the end. Step 4 is to learn skills. We're going to learn and practice. We want to develop muscle memory. So that's where the practicing comes in, and learning it so it becomes something that's automatic, like an immediate self-protection action. If it's an earthquake, we want to do these drills where we drop cover and hold on. And they are very effective and very comforting to children to know what to do when they start to see things shake. Our grandson, we'd done a drill with him when he was age 9. And when the earthquake hit last year, he was 11. And he remembered, oh, this is an earthquake. He got his brothers and they went under the kitchen table because mom was still up with baby. And he made sure that they drop covered and held on. And because they knew what to do, it wasn't as frightening for them. So it's very important, especially for, it's important for all of us, but that's just an example of that. Stop, drop, and roll. If you're on fire, it's not the normal tendency. You want to run, but that fans the flames. So these are things that we can practice now so that should something happen, we'll know what to do. Fire suppression. How many have used a fire extinguisher? There are first responder skills, taking first aid classes. There's basic, advanced. The wilderness first aid class was one of my favorites that I took. 60% of our population we found had taken first aid classes, and 59% had taken the CPR and AED classes. and 32% had taken the CERT classes, which is the community emergency response teams, that has a lot of great training in it. And sometimes those are free, and sometimes there is a cost associated with them. Usually there is a small cost, but then this is one that's really good. Our first responders are taught deep breathing because of how it helps the body. First of all, provides more oxygen to our brain so we can think clearer. It does focus our attention on the present. It helps slow us down, and it gives us physiological control of our stress response. And deep breathing is in the belly, and it's not up in the chest. So you can put your hand, one hand on your back and one hand on your stomach, blow all your air out, and then see where you take your next breath from. I actually had to relearn how to deep breathe. You'll notice a baby is really good. Their little stomach will go up and down, and it's very easy to see on them. But a lot of adults, a lot of us have forgotten how to do that deep breathing, and we're a very shallow chest breather. And this is something you can practice while you're needing to be calm at a traffic light, while you're stopped, or wherever you may be. Some other skills. If we had grid down living and we don't have any of our services, we need some water purification. We need to understand how that works, how those different methods work and what they are. Alternative sanitation is another important one, alternative cooking methods. You'll notice at the bottom of the slides, there is sometimes where this information came from so that you can, like the Disaster Discovery Center, we don't claim to be the experts, but we know how to find the information. And we've done a lot of research to find that, and we can pass that on to you. So knowing where how to shut off your utilities and when you might want to do that. Your water, you'd want to shut it off anytime there's a leak in the system at your home, inside your home, not on the street. The electricity, find that fuse box, click all those small switches off first, and then that main switch. And then when you turn it back on, if you get to go back and turn it back on, you're going to flip the main switch and then your individual small switches. And gas, if you smell, hear, or have structural damage to your home or nearby fire, that is when you would want to turn it off. And these percentages are showing the number of people who know how to do that. So again, we can do better in this area as well. They found that turning our gas off isn't necessary in an earthquake. From one of the earthquakes they had in San Francisco in 1989, disc jockey was very disturbed and panicked and told everyone to turn it off. And they found out it was only necessary in 2% of the cases, because those lines are much more flexible than a lot of the other things. Then step 5 is to safeguard our finances. Purchasing insurance is important, setting aside emergency funds, having 3 to 6 months of our living expenses set aside. Just keep setting aside every month for that. And then learn about some mitigation costs. Insurance, not very many people have earthquake insurance. It is not part of a homeowner's policy. You'll want to know that. And you can look into that. Flooding is not covered under a homeowner's policy either. So you will want to look into that. But there are certain areas that will require that because of the flood zone that you live in. And it doesn't matter where you live in the country. It's based on the flood zone that identifier as far as the cost of that goes. And again, check with an insurance provider to learn more about that. I thought it was interesting that only 62% of people have life insurance policies, but there are additional policies like annuities that allow for some use of those funds. And an annuity is generally based on a life insurance and will allow you usually to withdraw about 10% a year for retirement. But the newer policies will also let you use it for home health care, terminal illnesses, and disability type things. So you don't necessarily have to carry a separate disability policy anymore. Mitigation costs. There are lots of things we can do to prepare our homes. Like we can secure the contents or furniture and appliances. And those things are generally not that expensive. The structural adjustments is where our cost starts to come in, and we need to really budget. Although we did look into securing all of our photos and learned that a locking hook is about $4 a piece, and we had 25 photos with glass in them that needed to be secured. So that is a little costly. So we have secured important ones only to up to this point in time, but we can continue to add to that. And then step 6 kind of goes along with that. It's what those mitigation efforts we're going to take. But securing contents and objects, this is pretty simple to do. We can rearrange the contents of our cabinets and shelves so that the heavy breakable items are down low. And then get rid of anything that's above a bed or secure it, because you want that to be a safe place. And then putty, loose objects. The earthquake putty works quite well and is very easily accessible and very inexpensive. Hanging pictures with locking hooks and Velcro, that is a little bit pricier, but have a way to clean them up if you're not ready to invest in those locking hooks. Securing our furniture and appliances, it's good to secure those to the walls so that they don't move and cause damage or injury to anyone. Only 62% of the people we surveyed knew that they had their water heater secured. There were several who did not have any idea if it was, but look for 2 metal straps that are screwed into the studs, and make sure that you do have flexible gas connection, and flexible water connections are also very helpful. Structural adjustments that we can make sure the house is bolted to the foundation. In some of the older unreinforced masonry structures, there wasn't any bolting done from the house to the foundation or from the house to the roof. And so that's something you want to look into. If that roof has been replaced, a lot of times the roofers have connected it, because that's something that they'll look for and do as they replace that. You can install gas appliance shutoff valves for if you have gas appliances, so that they'll automatically shut off if there is an earthquake. You can install hurricane shutters and safe rooms for tornado and hurricane for our winds that we sometimes get. And then landscaping, we can create defensible spaces to protect against fire. So of course, don't store your firewood right next to your home or any other flammable items. And also for fire and crime, trim your trees and your shrubs so that they're not hiding places and so that they're not transmitting the fire to your home. For crime, turn on your porch lights. You can add motion sensor lights. Flooding, you want to just make sure that everything's sloping away from your home so that the water wouldn't come into your home on that. And those are a lot of inexpensive things we can do. It's just a matter of realizing what they are and doing them. Okay, we're going to come back to organizing supplies now. First of all, identify what you already have. And then there are a lot of lists you can look at as far as what you need to acquire. Red Cross has a great list. Be Ready Utah on their website has an excellent list that we really like. And then start to gather those supplies together. There will be some things that you'll want to purchase. The masks, we actually had the N95 masks because we were told to get some of those before the pandemic, before they were very expensive and before you couldn't even get them. So you can get plastic and hurricane tape to put up in case a window breaks. And then keeping cash on hand in small bills is really important. If we don't have power, then the stores are not really ringing items up in the way that we're used to, and they're not giving change. So whatever you have, they will take. And it's also a way to barter with your neighbors in case you need to. And by the way, if you have a neighbor who tells you that they are coming to your house, please ask them what they're bringing, as sometimes they see that you are concerned about preparing, they're thinking that you have enough supplies for them as well. They're not realizing how much they need to have. And just ask them what they're going to bring to the party. We have a model called Rebound in 72. It's a whole workshop that's actually a good 1.5 to 2 hours long. And we look at some different time periods and how we would want to prepare for those. And it also talks about 8 different need areas that we have. And these are on our website, which, by the way, there is a handout on our website as well. Did that handout get posted in the chat? I'm not sure. Anyway, it is on the disasterdiscoverycenter.org website. It'll be under the documents, and it should be that first document. But this target model is in there too, the diagram for Rebound in 72. And we'll talk about some of these different things in there. So before,
it's also in the description on YouTube as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Brian. So before, which is now, we are making plans and collecting what we need for each area. We're going to respond during that time. We need to know what the impact is, like be able to recognize it, and then know what our immediate protective response is. In that first 72 seconds, we're not looking for any supplies at that point in time. If you prepare from the inside out, it's very cost effective because so far we're totally free. And then we're assessing our condition in that next hour or so, and we're recovering in those time periods after. And there's some things that we might want to have. For example, this is a kit you can put together very simply for everyone in your home. If there was an earthquake and you were in bed, you are going to want to have a flashlight, a pair of sturdy shoes, because if some of those pictures fall and the glass breaks, you need some shoes to be able to walk. You don't want to compound any injuries by adding cuts on the feet to that. Clothes or bathrobe. You can put them in a backpack or just a simple grocery bag, one of those plastic bags. Tie it to your beds or secure it to a leg of your bed so that you have that. And that's ready to go. And you have completed one of the steps, or a simple thing that we can do. A vehicle kit, only 55% of them had that. And for example, water, snack, flashlights, extra batteries. I love that the batteries now are saying, the new ones I bought just said they had a 2-year protection against leakage, because for a while I had taken all my batteries out of my flashlights. And now it's nice to know I can keep them in some of my things without having to worry about them corroding. A first aid kit. I use my first aid kit in my vehicle probably more than anything else in my vehicle. Blanket, whistle, pen and paper. Those are the types of things. Think about each of your need areas and what you might want. And then I like to put them in Ziploc bags just because it's really easy to access the contents and provides that moisture protection. And then in any kit I have, I like to include empty bags because they're always useful for things. You can cover them with duct tape. They'll make them really fancy and they'll last for years. You can fold them and unfold them, but I like to be able to see what's in them. So I just include extra bags, and they're fairly inexpensive. A disaster supply kit. Instead of calling it a 72-hour kit anymore, or a bug out kit or an evacuation kit, let's call it a disaster supply kit, because we can either use it at home or we can use it to evacuate, depending on what we need. And if you want, label bags with each of those 8 need areas and then see what you want to customize for each of those. The emotional educational piece of that is really important, which the pandemic is really bringing out. You want to have some written materials, especially like a first aid manual that Are You Ready? That FEMA has put together is an excellent resource manual to have as well. And then comfort items. If that's music for you, you can toss 5 dice into evacuation kit, and there's all kinds of games you can play with a big group, and that can help take your mind off of what's going on should you need to be in a shelter or somewhere. Reading material, if you like to read. Oh, by the way, the book that I've got pictured here is called The Unthinkable by Amanda Ripley. It is one of the best books it is the best book I've read on disaster and how our brain works and operates in that. That is an excellent book if you want to look that up and get some of my ideas from her on how to be more resilient. Art supplies, drawing or whatever that helps to relieve you is really good. Communication in this area, have a plastic whistle. A metal one could stick to your lips if it's super cold, and that's not going to be comfortable. And then that cell phone that we're going to text, that written list of contact numbers. Again, make a written list of emergency contact numbers and important numbers for your family. Having a charger that works without power, whether that's a little solar one or whatever. We use our phones for a lot of things and we want them accessible. Battery powered radio. It doesn't have to be a very fancy one. A crank one. I don't know if I'm not strong enough to keep cranking and to do that, take care of that. So I prefer to have the battery powered radio with extra batteries because I know that's going to work and it's not going to give out in the middle of an announcement that I will want to hear. For water, April again mentioned this if you were at her earlier presentation. You need to store at least a gallon of water per person per day. Sandy City tells us for 3 weeks. FEMA suggests for 2 weeks. And then an additional 0.5 to 1 gallon per person per day just for hygiene and dishwashing. And that comes out to like 21 gallons per person at the minimum. And only 50% of our survey respondents had done that. And this is, like April said, I think it's also one of the most important things. So these durable food grade containers, the commercially purchased, tend to have only a 6-month shelf life. 5-gallon containers, 2-liter soft drink bottles are really good to have. Again, these percentages are coming from the survey that we had. Don't use the juice bottles for water that you want to drink. That may work if you've got some already stored that way for rinsing your hands or something like that. Milk bottles are the worst that you could probably use because they tend to leak. They get pinprick holes, so you can actually get water all over, or they may just evaporate because those lids don't seal well. And then in glass, it seals well and everything, but it is heavy and it's breakable. So it's not the best alternative. Soft drink bottles is what the World Health Organization recommends using. And our family doesn't drink a lot of soft drinks, but we had a neighbor who gave us a lot of containers. So and weddings are a great place to also find those. They're easy to clean, they're durable and strong. That narrow opening they have will prevent external contamination. And then they're pretty stable. They don't necessarily tip over very easily. They have that tight fitting lid that's got that little rubber seal in it, and that makes them really good. And then you can take 12 of those in an Apple box. So again, we want free and low cost ideas. This is a super easy way to do it. Stack those on, we've just got ours stacked on a couple of boards, 2x4s that are under them. And then we've got several boxes stacked on top of each other. That will provide, those 12 will provide the recommended water for 6 days for one person. And then they're also nice because they're portable. You can grab one and take it with you because it only weighs about a little less than 4.5 pounds. So that is a quick and easy way to do that. Also, one way, another place to store these bottles is behind, like underneath a kitchen sink or underneath a bathroom sink, or even lining the back of cabinets so you can't really reach the things that are in the back. You can put water bottles back there. Make sure that you're filling these directly from the tap or using a lead-free hose if you're filling those large containers. And then don't add bleach to treated tap water, and don't store it directly on the concrete. It takes concrete over 50 years to completely cure, which means you're always having moisture seeping up through it. So it's not a good place for storing anything directly on that. And then make sure you've got things for purifying water. And then if that thing you've got is bleach, the active chlorine in that only has a 6-month shelf life. If it's less than a year old, you can add twice the amount and get some results that are good from that. But if you can't smell that chlorine in it, then it's no longer active. And then maintaining that water storage. I loved when I found this from Utah State University Extension. They said drinking water should have an indefinite shelf life if it's stored in clean, disinfected containers and kept cool, dry, and dark, and then not stored near gas, kerosene, pesticides, or things like that, other poisonous substances. And then you assess just every 6 months for shrinkage, leakage, cloudiness, algae, etc., and replace as needed. And that it was collaborated by BYU Water Study, where in 2012, they tested 240 samples of stored tap water from 90 different households in Utah. And they had been stored anywhere from 12 weeks to 25 years. And it was really interesting, but they came up with that same conclusion that they did not find any problems with them. Water purification. We have just a few minutes, so we're going to skip some of this, which is kind of why I moved it to the end. It is really important to have that nutritious, ready-to-eat food, especially those first few days after a disaster, so that you're not spending time preparing food using your alternative cooking methods because your power is out. And so whether that's protein bars, I love freeze-dried foods. I like eating them just out of the can. And you will want to store a little extra water with those canned meats, something that will give you a lot of good nutrition. And then cooking without power, there's lots of different things. I'm going to tell you about number 5, which is a thermal cooker. If you have a cooler, cotton towels, so the microfiber ones are not that great, and a way to boil water in a heavy container that you could put that boiled water in with, say, some rice or something. Anyway, you have a thermal cooker because you can boil that water, put in the food, cover it up, and especially if it can be tightened some way, you can put it in your cooler all wrapped in these cotton towels, stuff that cooler full, and you have just created a very nice thermal cooker. So again, we're looking for these free and low cost ideas. There's a lot of tools. We consider our insurance policies to be tools. There's hurricane tape that you can use, especially if you're outdoors. Duct tape is not as good at weathering, and hurricane tape is actually really strong. Painter's tape could be used inside with plastic sheeting should you have broken windows. Of course, you want a way to stay warm in cold weather and cool in hot weather, at least here in Utah. That's really important. Transportation, good walking shoes is what most people wanted after 9/11. So we learned that that is a good thing to have. And then having your gas tank half full, a bike, stroller, wagon, scooter. Toilet paper, that was something that we tended to run out of. Having a bucket with a toilet seat, you can use pipe insulation for that and a lid. And then lining it with a heavy duty plastic bag. And you can actually put a paper grocery bag inside of that, separate your liquid and solid wastes. And when you take it outside to bury it in your deep hole in the ground, you're not having to dump it out of a plastic bag, but you are able to actually take the whole thing outside and just bury the paper bag, which sounds a whole lot friendlier to me than the other. So anyway, there's a lot of things we can use for sanitation and hygiene. Our Rebound in 72 workshop will go through a lot of these. Realizing that a pharmacy only has a 7-day supply on their delivery day and a 1-day supply the day before it gets delivered is really important. And if you do need help with meds, here is a website and phone number, toll-free number you can call if needing meds for that, but really important if you need that. Sometimes with insurance, you can call and refill early every month, but you can actually just ask what the crash price is and get an extra 30 days that way sometimes. First aid supplies. it's always good to have those on hand. There's a lot of different ones. We're not going to go into that right now. Again, that's in another workshop we do, so we'll just kind of skip that. I did want to mention that 98% of the ones we surveyed had a smoke alarm, but only 78% had a carbon monoxide detector. And that is really concerning to me because that's odorless, and you don't know if it's in the home until it has affected you to the point where you may not be very responsive. And that carbon monoxide detector can be at like floor level or in an outlet. It can be in a combination with a smoke alarm, or it can be just sitting on a shelf. It doesn't matter where it is because carbon monoxide is the same amount is found in every layer of the air there. Earthquake alarm will just give you a few seconds notice because it is able to measure the P wave, and you don't feel it until the S wave, which comes later, depending on how far away you are from the epicenter. And that is a little pricier because I think they were about $40. Securing your water heater. It's less than $20 to buy a kit to do this. So if you don't have that, make sure that you do that. And then knowing that if you are not home to shut your water off, that reverse pressure, if there's a leak in the system, can actually drain the hot water from there. So you may not have that. There is a great insurance inventory that University of Illinois put together, and there is a website for that. There's a resource list on our website that will have this website on it as well. It's really easy to print off, and it will have different things you might find in different places. Like I said, we do have a Rebound in 72 workshop is the one that we've been doing for a long time. We used to offer that every third Thursday, but with the pandemic, we haven't been able to resume that quite yet. So I'm not sure when that will go on, but it talks about some different supplies we might want to have. We talk about different protective actions you might want to take. And again, there's the model for that. Our website is disasterdiscoverycenter.org. Please take our surveys. There's a disaster myth survey. Also listen to Talisha's presentation that she did in November that's on the Be Ready YouTube channel. And it'll take about 10 minutes to take this, and then you receive the answers by email. It will take you about 20 to 45 minutes to read what took us 500 hours to research. So that will answer the questions about water on concrete and some different things like that. And probably why we're still expecting a large earthquake in this area, and the moderate one we had in Magna is not going to cut it. Readiness survey will take a little bit. That's the one that has been referenced in this presentation. Feasibility survey. We want to see if people want to have a disaster discovery center as an actual place and what they would want to do there. You can help volunteer. You can sign up for email list for updates. You can register for our workshops when they get started again. And we are ready for questions, James. Were there any questions that we wanted to?
Yeah, great job, Karen. Thank you so much. We do have one question from Leslie Probert. She says, why does commercially bottled water have a shelf life of 6 months, but the BYU study showed bottled water stored in homes had lasted 25 years? Wouldn't commercially bottled water store a long time?
It's not the water in them that's the problem. It's the thickness of the plastic that they make them with now that causes them to like shrivel. Well, they don't shrivel, but they get all misshaped. I'm not sure what the word is for that, but they like the problem is that plastic that they're made out of. It's just so flimsy now, and it's not thick enough to really support water, and that's why it needs to be rotated like that.
All right, thank you. One other question that came in just barely was from Stacy Banks. She asks, what is the link for the insurance inventory PDF? I was wondering if you could.
That one's
go
going to
back.
be called Rebound in 72 Readiness Resources, I believe, is the name of that. And it should be there. And if not, email me and I will send it to you. But I'm pretty sure that that's one of the documents that we have up there.
And you're saying that's on the Disaster Discovery Center website?
Yes.
Okay, I'll see if I can find that and put that in the chat.
Okay, that'd be great. Yeah, there's several documents that are up there that are ready to print or view, whichever you prefer.
All right, and just as a reminder to everybody, feel free to include your questions in the YouTube chat, and we have a team that's trying to answer those questions, as well as a survey after each of the presentations. We'd love your feedback, not a survey, but an evaluation. Oh, here's another question that just came in.
Okay.
John Fick, he asks, would the thicker commercial plastic water bottles like Smart Water store water longer?
Yeah, because the problem is the flimsiness of the plastic. They used to be a lot thicker, and in some parts of the world they still are, and so they are excellent and they will store much longer. And they don't kind of implode on themselves where they get just all misshapen and strange looking.
All right. Just barely adding the link to the survey, or not the survey, but the feedback into the chat. So please give your feedback. And I'm not seeing any additional questions yet.
Okay. Thanks so much for the opportunity, and I hope that you've learned something and that we've helped to simplify something and given you some things that you can work on that are free and low cost and will make a substantial difference in an outcome. You know, anything that we can do has a beneficial effect. It's not like we have to do it all at once. It's really just a lifestyle of how we think about it and do things.
Okay, and there are a couple more questions that just popped in.
Okay.
One is from Ronald Giles. Can you put water on the basement floor if it is on floor tile?
Oh, if you've got a layer of tile. I don't know for sure on that. Yeah, the tile is going to be better than the cement. But I don't know, like the grout lines, and I don't know on that. I just like to put it up on a piece of wood or something. And I've heard you can even just use cardboard, but I prefer something a little thicker and heavier, especially if I'm storing water. I don't want it on something that's going to disintegrate if the water leaks.
All right. Somebody was asking if you could show the slide on the medical documents again.
Oh, on that medical? Yeah, that's possible.
And then while you bring that one up, another question was, do you need to sterilize containers before storing water in them?
Yes. They need to be washed really well. Let's see. There it is. Okay. There you go for a medical consent form. Yes, you definitely want to wash them really well. I've had some that I haven't sterilized. They seem to be just fine. But now that I know I'm supposed to sterilize them, it's a weak bleach solution that you rinse them in, and then you again rinse out the bleach. And I mean, it's very simple to do. So it would be a good step to add.
Okay, I think that's it. Just a reminder about the Great Utah Shakeout that's coming up on April 15th. Go to shakeout.org/Utah to participate in that. I think we'll turn the time back over to Wade Matthews.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you very much, James, and thank you very much, Karen. Excellent presentation, very comprehensive and detailed, excellent emergency preparedness training right there. And if I could add just a quick comment to that discussion about the bottled water, one thing I found in my research is that it's the container, as Karen talked about, the plastic is not designed for long-term food grade storage. And if you look at your plastic containers that have they've all got that triangle recycling symbol with a number inside. Bottled water is usually a number 1, which is not a long-term food grade plastic. It'll start breaking down chemicals and leaching that chemical into the water. So if you find an old case of bottled water hidden in the garage someplace and take a bottle out and drink it, you'll notice it may have a funny taste to it. That's because it sat there long enough that the chemical has started to leach into the water itself. But if you've got the food grade plastic, which is a 2, 4, or 5 number in the recycling symbol, that is food grade plastic that will last long term, as recommended by the USU and BYU studies there for long-term water storage, and no need to rotate that if the water was treated when it was stored and kept in those conditions that Karen identified there. Also, a reason that you want to kind of keep that up off the concrete floor too is allow air to circulate around it. So maybe, as Karen said, putting that up on some wood blocks or something like that, let air circulate around your water container. So with that, again, James mentioned the presentation feedback forms that we ask you to do at the completion of each survey, each presentation. So as a reminder, if you were here and joined us in the earlier presentations by April, please fill a form out for each of those presentations as well. And in this break, a few minutes we have left in this break, we have a wildfire preparedness coming up next. But before that, that'll be at 4 o'clock. But before that, Brian is going to go ahead and play one of our sponsor promotions for us for Smith & Edwards. We appreciate Smith & Edwards sponsorship for the webinar. Go ahead, Brian.
Shopping at Smith & Edwards is always one big adventure for your entire family. Wow. Camping and cooking, hardware and houseware, Western boots, hats and tack, hunting and fishing. Come in and explore. They've got everything. Over 70 years serving northern Utah and a second location in West Jordan. Smith & Edwards, 2 locations, one big adventure.
Smith & Edwards, Surplus Plus. Smith & Edwards, a country boy store.
All right, thank you, Brian. Thank you, Smith & Edwards, for your sponsorship of our Be Ready Utah webinar. And again, also to our other sponsor, University of Utah's Rocky Mountain Center for Occupational and Environmental Health. So coming up in just a couple minutes, we have our presentation on wildfire prevention and preparedness. So you want to stay tuned for that.
Hey, I've got a new bill if you want to trade.
Hey, sure, thanks.
All right. Let's see. Library card, chicken takeout, ice card.
Ice card? What's that?
Oh, sorry, ICE, ICE, in case of emergency. It's a card I keep in my wallet with important phone numbers. That way, if my phone doesn't work or I'm injured, someone else can contact my emergency numbers.
Huh. I should do that.
This is a photocopy.
All right, thank you, Brian, for playing those videos for us. Yes, anytime's a good time to talk about emergency preparedness. Those videos, by the way, are available on the Be Ready Utah YouTube channel, youtube.org/BeReadyUtah.